Michael David Knight's name would be forever tied to a strange and haunting mystery. A mystery that began in his youth and twisted into something far darker as he grew older. The chilling tale he shared with the authorities on the night of his arrest, on April 24, 1996, was nothing short of unsettling. It was a story of grief, regret, and an obsession with revisiting the past, only to find that the past was not something one should meddle with. Michael's life had been shattered when he was just a 15-year-old boy. On a quiet evening in 1956, he had returned from a visit to a friend's house to find his home surrounded by police cars. His uncle, his mother's brother, was being escorted down the steps of their family home. His uncle's expression, the look he gave Michael, haunted him for the rest of his life. That moment would be the turning point in his existence. His parents had been brutally murdered by the very man who was supposed to care for them, and their deaths left a hole in Michael's heart that no amount of time could fill. Michael was sent to live with his grandparents in Kingston Springs, Tennessee, where he remained until he graduated high school. From there, he left for the city to attend university, and eventually, he landed a steady office job. But despite all his accomplishments, something was missing, something that gnawed at him day in and day out. The monotonous routine of school, work, and societal expectations did not bring him the happiness or fulfillment he had hoped for. He had followed the script and done everything he was told to do, yet he felt empty inside. It was the summer of 1970 when Michael's dissatisfaction reached its peak. He was sitting at his desk in the office, going through the usual paperwork, when a thought suddenly struck him like a bolt of lightning. If this is what the next 40 years of my life are going to look like, then I'd rather be dead. With that thought in mind, he stood up, grabbed his things, and walked out. He hopped into his 1965 Buick Riviera and drove straight home, packed his essentials, and headed for the Big South Fork area in the Appalachian Mountains, a place he had frequented as a child with his grandparents. As he drove through the winding roads and dense forests, memories of his parents flooded his mind. He had always longed to go back to those simpler days when they were still alive, when everything seemed perfect. He didn't have a plan, but he needed to get away from the suffocating life he had built for himself. By the time he arrived at the mountains, he had run out of gas and was forced to camp for the night in his car. The next morning, he made up his mind. He would leave everything behind and live in the mountains. It was a decision born of desperation and a yearning for freedom. The days that followed were difficult. He had enough food for a few days, but after that, he would have to fend for himself. On the fifth day, when hunger and thirst became unbearable, Michael decided to go out scavenging. He spent the day looking for anything edible, and eventually came across a few cabins hidden deep in the woods. The sight of them was like a beacon of hope. Breaking into the first cabin, Michael was overjoyed to find shelves stocked with dried goods and canned food. It was a treasure trove, and he wasted no time in loading up his backpack. That night, he slept in the cabin, making sure to leave before dawn to avoid being spotted. Over the next few years, he continued to return to the cabins, always careful not to hit the same one too often to avoid detection. Despite the challenges of mountain life, Michael found a sense of peace in the wilderness. But as the years passed, something else began to take hold of him, a strange obsession with reliving his past. One day, after raiding a cabin he had visited before, Michael came across an old black leather book lying on a kitchen table. It was unlike any book he had ever seen, and he couldn't resist the urge to investigate. The book was old, its pages yellowed with age, and on the first page a single word was written, Predarum. The rest of the pages appeared blank, but as Michael flipped through them, he found a strange paragraph written in a language he couldn't understand. Out of curiosity, he began to read the paragraph aloud. To his shock, the world around him seemed to shift. In the blink of an eye, Michael found himself sitting in his third-grade classroom, watching his teacher write on the chalkboard. He tried to move, but his body wouldn't respond. He could see and hear everything as though he was merely a spectator, not in control of his own actions. It was a surreal experience. The most startling part was when he walked outside during recess and saw his own reflection in the door's glass. only it was his 8-year-old self staring back at him. At first, Michael thought he was dreaming. Was this real? Was he dead? He couldn't make sense of what was happening, but soon, he realized he could experience everything again. The smells, the sights, the sounds. It was as if he had returned to one of the happiest moments of his childhood. He ran through the playground, laughing with his friends, feeling like a child again, free from all the pain and loss he had experienced. But then things took a darker turn. As he watched his younger self go about his day, he remembered that this was the day he and his girlfriend Brittany had planned to meet at the stream for their first kiss. Michael had always regretted not going through with it when he was younger, and now, through the book, he had the chance to relive that moment. But as he stood at the side of the building, trying to muster the courage to go to the stream, he saw something that shook him to his core. Across the school grounds, there was a man dressed in red. His face was disfigured, distorted to the point that Michael couldn't make it out. The man stood motionless, staring at Michael and his younger friends. Michael tried to make sense of it, but he didn't remember ever seeing him before. He was out of place, a figure that shouldn't have been there. His younger self didn't notice the man, and Michael tried to shake off the eerie feeling that had washed over him. As the day wore on, the man in red seemed to appear in more and more places, never moving, always watching. It terrified Michael, but he tried to ignore it, trying to savor the time he had with his parents and friends. When the school day ended, he returned home to find his mother waiting for him. He had almost forgotten about the man in red when he was embraced by his mother, the warmth and love of the moment overpowering the fear that had lingered. But as he lay in bed that night, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The next morning, Michael woke up back at the camp, the book lying at his feet. He realized that whatever happened in the past was not merely a dream. It was real. The book had transported him back to his childhood, and now he couldn't stop thinking about it. The thought of reliving those moments, seeing his parents again, feeling their love, was too tempting to resist. But there was a price. The more he used the book, the more the man in red appeared, getting closer and darker each time. Michael soon realized that the book was not just a gateway to his past. It was a dangerous portal, one that seemed to be draining him. Each time he used it, pages of the book would turn black, and the man in red became more sinister. His form began to shift, no longer resembling a human, but something far more terrifying. Michael had to be careful, but his obsession with revisiting the past was too strong. He continued to use the book, unable to stop himself. Eventually, Michael noticed that the book's pages were running out. The final pages had turned black, and he feared what would happen when the book was completely used up. The man in red had followed him for so long that it seemed inevitable. Something terrible was going to happen, but nothing could prepare him for the day when he opened the book to find himself standing in the basement of his childhood home, hearing the sounds of shouting and fighting from upstairs. As he crept upstairs to investigate, he found drops of blood leading toward the bedrooms. The door at the top of the stairs creaked open, and there, at the end of the hallway, stood the man in red, now completely transformed into something monstrous. Before Michael could react, a knock on the front door distracted him. It was his uncle calling out to his parents. Michael quickly turned to retreat into the basement, but something unseen shoved him down the stairs, injuring him severely. When he regained consciousness, he found himself back at his camp, bleeding from a wound in his back. Michael never opened the book again after that night. He had spent years obsessing over it, but now he realized that his uncle may not have been the true murderer of his parents. The look on his uncle's face as he was led away in handcuffs always haunted him, but now Michael wondered if his uncle had seen the same dark figure he had seen. The authorities eventually found Michael living in the wilderness and arrested him for breaking and entering. They discovered the black book exactly as he had described it. Experts couldn't decipher the strange language it contained, and the mystery of the book remained unsolved. Michael spent 6 months in jail, and after his release, he disappeared without a trace. The mystery of the book, the man in red, and Michael's bizarre story would remain unsolved. To this day, no one knows where Michael went, and the book remains a mystery. Some believe that it was cursed, others think it was a gateway to another world. All that is known for sure is that Michael David Knight's life was irrevocably changed by that black book and the horrors it brought into his world. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.